This video is entitled Radio Buttons, Checkboxes, and Select, and is a companion to Chapter 12 of the book, So You Want to Learn to Use HTML and CSS. I'm Jim Renault from Shawnee State University, and I'll be taking you through this presentation. In this presentation, as the title kind of implies, I'm going to be showing you how to create a group of radio buttons on an HTML form. I'm going to show you how to use some checkboxes on an HTML form, and I'm also going to go through and create a drop-down select for the HTML. Let's start with radios. Now, radio buttons are a type of input where you say input type radio, but this is where they get tricky. All of the radios that belong to a group of radio buttons all have the same name, but each need a different value. So you can see that I have two radio buttons, bird and cat, and you can choose one or the other, but not both, because that's the way radios work. Now, you can have multiple groups of radios on a single page, but they would each have, the first group would have one name, the second group would have a different name. Now, you can also add IDs to these, but each would have to have a unique ID. But they all have the same name, and whichever one is selected, that value gets sent back to the web server. So it's the value of the selected one that gets sent back to the web server. So all radios in the same group have to have the same name. A user can select zero or more of them, zero or one of them, only one. You can add a checked attribute to one so that there's a default value, so there's a default checked radioed one. The value of the one selected is the one sent to the server. And you should have a label associated with each radio, and I didn't do that here, but you'll see that on the next page. Here we can see a little HTML form, standalone little page with a set of radio buttons, and you can see that it's asking for your favorite pet, and it then has a label for radio pet B bird, close label, radio pet C cat, close label. So, and then the last one is a radio pet value X. It has the checked attribute. You can't see that for the video, but it's there. And so you get something that looks like that, a radio. And they can choose a bird, a cat, a dog, an other, or no preference. So like my wife would choose other because her favorite pet is her bearded dragon. But my favorite cat's my pet. My favorite pet's my cat. Oops, reverse that. So I could then check the radio. I can only select one because it's a radio group, all with the same name, pet. And so it'll send to the web server pet equals C if I were to hit submit. Checkboxes are also another type of input where we say input type checkbox, and we just give it a name. Each checkbox must have a unique name, because how do we know which checkbox is checked if we have them with the same name? So each checkbox has a different name. With checkboxes, a user can select zero or more. You can select all of them or none of them. You can add a checked attribute to default, so that to default a checkbox to mark it checked when the page loads. And what happens is all of the names of the checked ones are returned to the server, but the names of the unchecked ones are not sent back to the server. So the server just has to check the data that is sent. Well, that was returned, so that was checked. That one wasn't returned, so it wasn't checked. Easy enough. And you should also have a label associated to a checkbox. Let's see an example. So here in this little simple HTML page, instead of having radios, even though I still called the div with a class of radio, notice the class definition first up top. Form and radio are grid displays with one column, and then radio is a grid display with two columns, and that's how I made this look good by using HTML grids, or by using CSS grids. But since we're talking about checkboxes, let's look at the checkbox. You can see right up above here that I have label input type checkbox name bird, and then in the label the word bird, so that the user sees bird with a capital B, but the server will be sent the word bird with a lowercase b as the ID as the key of what has been checked. Then you can see cat and dog and other. And you can see up above in the display of the page that I've checked bird and dog. If you've had no pets at all, you would just uncheck them all, right? Or if you've had all of them, you can check all. The last HTML tag that I wanted to show for form input here in this video is the select and option tags. Select basically will give us a drop down. You've seen them all on lots of web pages where you've got a drop down of state, you've got a drop down of something else. And what you do is you create select with a name, and the name again is the value that is the key that will be sent back to tell the web server which select was chosen. And then within select are options, and each option within the select should have a value. So you can see that I have here an option display AA with value AA. So in the dropdown, it'll say display AA, but AA would be what it sends. So there is also a way to make an option a select multi-select to allow for select multiple options, but just in this video, in this presentation, you can look that up in the documentation. And again, the value of the selected option is the value that's sent to the server. And you can see here, I've got a drop down of political parties here in the United States. It's 2020, it's election year. We're worried about these things right now. So you can see that I've got a drop down, and it says select name party. So what's going to be sent back to the server is party, and the letter D, R, I, O, and N will be sent back to the server to be recorded. So, but the user will see Democrat or Republican or independent or other or don't wish to answer. So by creating these 5 options, the user can click on the little arrow, drop down, choose the one they want, and hit submit. Very nice, very pretty, doesn't take up a lot of space, works a lot like a radio. They can choose one, but for states or for colors or for political parties or for lots of other things, the drop down, the select, and option just makes a whole lot of sense. That concludes video 12C. This presentation was copyright 2020 by James Immerno, PhD. You can contact me at jim@renejm at any time for anything. Just let me know if you got problems with this video or if you have additional questions. I'll be more than happy to answer them. This work is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial Share Alike 4.0 International License, and I'd like to say thanks for watching.